Okay, so an alternate form of the Dilbert's lemma is like this. So for this, see, given a partially ordered set, okay, we can think of a partially ordered set, or we can think of a length and width of a partially ordered set. Okay, the intuition normally comes from the length of a totally ordered set is the length of the set, right? So the natural way of thinking of the length of a partially ordered set would be the length of the longest chain in it. Okay, so we will say that the length of the partially ordered set is the length of the longest chain in it. Okay, so what would be the length of the partially ordered set, let's say 1, 2, 3 with containment? Okay, this is a partially ordered set. So what would be the length of this partially ordered set? What is the longest chain in this? It's of length what? 3, right? I think 4. So empty set. I'm sorry. This is the power set of this. 1, 2, and 3. The power set of this set. Okay, with containment. So you can start with the empty set. Then, because you have to start with the empty set. The natural choice is the empty set because this partially ordered set has a minimum and a maximum element in it. The minimum element is the empty set, and the maximum element is the full set. Okay, so you could start with the empty set and push one element in it. Okay, then you push two elements, one more element in it, so it will give you a 2 set, and then you push the third element, you get the third set. So it will have a length 4, right? Empty set of set containing one element. Then you push one more element in it, you get a set containing 2 elements. And then you push one more element, you get the set, the full set. So the length would be 4. Okay. We can also talk about the width of a partially ordered set. Okay, that is the natural way would be saying that the width is the size of the largest anti-chain. Okay, so let's draw this out. The partially ordered set. The partially ordered set. We have this kind of a diagram that we can draw here. So this is the natural, right? A lattice. Between any two, the way of drawing this is like this. Between any two sets, one 3 and 2 3, right? So two sets should have a path between them if they are related. That's the way in which you should draw it. Okay, so here this would go here, this would also go here, and this would be there, there. That's the relation, right? So this kind of gives you the relation when you look at it. Okay, so that's the partially ordered set. Okay, now from this you can easily tell what is the size of the largest anti-chain. Can you tell the size of the largest anti-chain? Okay, so firstly, the empty set the empty set cannot be in any anti-chain, right? Why? It can be in only one anti-chain, that is the singleton, the empty set itself. That's the only anti-chain it can be in. It cannot be in any other one. Why? Why this cannot be in any other anti-chain? It's related to all the other sets, right? This is contained in every other set. So it is less than or equal to every other set. So it is not, it cannot be in any other anti-chain. Okay. Similarly, this cannot be in any other anti-chain. right? Because it's related to every other element. It is greater than all the other elements. So it cannot be any anti-chain. Okay. So let's start with any other element. Let's say, for instance, you take 1. Okay. If 1 is in an anti-chain, 1, 2 and 1, 3 cannot be in that same anti-chain. Okay. If 1 is in an anti-chain, 1, 2 and 1, 3 cannot be in that anti-chain. So we have thrown away, if 1 is in an anti-chain, we have thrown away this and this. So we are left with only these 3. Okay. So say, then if you put 2 inside, okay, the singleton set 2, then this cannot go, so this would have to go. So you have, so the two options here are, if you have, this is an anti-chain and 2 is in that anti-chain, then you can only extend that with 3. Okay. The other option you have is, if this is an anti-chain and this is also there, then what happens? Yeah, then yeah, in fact that cannot be the length of the, because the moment you have 1 and you put 2, 3 in it, then none of these can go, so that's just going to be of length 2. So your largest length anti-chain would be, one would be this, and there's another one. Can you see it? Yeah, it would be this, because see, the moment you have any singleton, you can make an argument that there can be at most 3 elements in that. That's all the singletons. The other option is this. These are the 2 biggest anti-chains in terms of length. So the width of this, as you can see, it has a breadth, right? This diagram kind of has a breadth. So that's what you're trying to capture, is the intuition of that breadth, which is essentially the anti-chain. So the size of the biggest anti-chain is the width of the partially ordered set. Okay. So that's the length and width of a partially ordered set. In terms of the length and width, we can state the Dilbert's lemma in a different way, that is, so if x with less than or equal to is a partially ordered set, okay, with length L, with length and width W, okay, then the cardinality of x has to be less than or equal to LW. Okay. That's the statement for your Dilbert's lemma. This is an alternate form of the Dilbert's lemma. And the proof goes in exactly the same way as you would do the proof in the previous form of the Dilbert's lemma. Okay, what you do is you say that you assume that the length of or yeah, so you assume that the size of this is, the cardinality of this is greater than LW, and get a contradiction. So let's see how we can do that. It's a very simple proof. So suppose the cardinality of X is strictly greater than LW. Okay, we can define that similar kind of function which we have done in the previous form of the Dilbert's lemma. That is, take F from X to L. This is basically 1, 2 up to L. Okay, by taking every element to the length of the longest chain starting with that element. That's what we had done in the previous case. Okay, so what will be F of X? It is the length of the longest chain starting with X. Okay, so the length of the longest chain starting with X. Given any point, I am going to map it to length of the longest chain starting with X. Okay, and consider the pullback of each of these elements. Okay, so yeah, so what does the pigeonhole principle tell us? This is a well defined function. There is absolutely no problem in it because the length of the longest chain is L, right? So every the length of the longest chain starting with X will not be able to exceed L. Okay, that's easy to observe. Okay, now what does the pigeonhole principle tell us? Yes, you have LW elements in the domain, right, and L elements in the codomain. What does the pigeonhole principle tell us? Yeah, so by the pigeonhole principle, yeah, what does it tell us? Yeah, so there will be some pullback, right, of size W plus 1, right. So there exists I, let's say, or say T in L such that the cardinality of the pullback is greater than or equal to strictly greater than W or greater than or equal to W plus 1. Okay, that's what we will get from the pigeonhole principle. Okay, now the interesting fact, just like last time, what you can notice is that the pullback of any of this is the same function which we defined in the previous theorem, previous form of the pigeonhole principle. Okay, what you can see is the pullback of any number is always going to be an anti-chain. Why? The pullback of any number is always going to be an anti-chain. Why? Because suppose you have some x and y in, or let's not go with, yeah, that's fine, in f inverse of t, which are related, okay, such that x is less than or equal to y. What is the contradiction? What is the meaning of x and y in f inverse of t? The length of the longest chain starting with x and y are both t, right? So if x is less than or equal to y, now you can put the longest chain starting with y, right? Append that to it, you will have, let's say this is z1, z2 up to zt. Now what have you got? You have got a chain, right, of length t plus 1 starting with x. That's not possible because x is here. So the length of the longest chain starting with x is t, right? So that's not possible, which means that the pullback of this function is always going to be an anti-chain. So this is an anti-chain of length w plus 1. That's your contradiction, and therefore this should be less than or equal to LW. Okay, that's what we have proved here. Okay. So even without any difficulty, I have actually also shown you that if the length is finite and the width is finite, then the poset should be finite. Okay. I have not actually assumed that x is finite. You don't need to. Okay. It would still follow. So now we will try to prove the infinite version of the Dilbert's lemma. So to prove the infinite version of the Dilbert's lemma, we will first have to prove one corollary. Okay, so sorry, we will have to prove one lemma. Okay, so yeah, I think let me recollect what is the Zorn's lemma. So what is Zorn's lemma? It simply states that okay, so it states that if a partially ordered set, okay, has a property that every chain is bounded above, okay, if you give me any chain, I can always find some element in the partially ordered set which is greater than all of these. Okay, so every chain is bounded above, then the partially ordered set has to have a maximal element. Okay, not a maximum, a maximal element. What is the difference? Does n with division have a oh, that does not have either. But what is a nice, yeah, if a nice way of constructing a partially ordered set which has a maximal element would be take the power set of A, okay, with containment and take off A from it. Okay, so these will have maximal elements. Take the partially ordered set of A, sorry, take the power set of A, you get that kind of a lattice diagram, right, what we have just drawn, 1, 2, 3. Okay, think of 1, 2, 3. Take off the set 1, 2, 3. Okay, now the maximal elements, that is the elements which don't have anything exceeding it, will be 2 element subsets. Right, I'm taking out 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the 2 element subset, those will be maximal elements. They are not maximum. Maximum would be everything is less than it. Okay, that's the difference in maximal and maximum. So what Zorn's lemma states is that if x with less than or equal to is a partially ordered set such that every chain is bounded above. So what do you mean by bounded above? Yeah, you can always find some element which is given any chain, I can find some element which is greater than all the elements in the chain. Okay, so every chain is bounded above, then x with less than or equal to has a maximal and not maximum, this is not maximum element. Okay, so that's your Zorn's lemma. This is the assumption which we are making. You should know what we are making to prove this statement. Okay, now there's another prerequisite for this, that is talking about a maximal anti-chain. What do you expect a maximal anti-chain to be? Right? What are anti-chains? No 2 elements in the set are related, right? So what is a maximal anti-chain? A maximal anti-chain would be a set, an anti-chain such that I cannot put any more elements in it and make a bigger anti-chain. In other words, it would be an anti-chain such that given any element outside it, it should be related to one of these. Make sense? Right? A maximal anti-chain would be an anti-chain such that if you give me an element outside it, it should be related to one of these. Hence, I cannot increase the size. right? Because if there's an element which is not related to any of these, I can put it inside and make the size of the anti-chain bigger. Okay, so that's a maximal anti-chain. So maximal anti-chain. So the lemma which we will be using to prove the infinite version of the Dilbert's theorem, Dilbert's lemma, Dilbert's theorem is something else, is the fact that we are going to show that any partially ordered set always has a maximal anti-chain, okay, always has some maximal anti-chain, okay. So what is a maximal anti-chain? If x with less than or equal to is a poset, then let's say A contained in X is a maximal anti-chain if 1, A is a anti-chain on its own, so anti-chain means no two elements of A are related, okay, and 2, for every x outside of A, right, x should be related to one of these elements. That means I cannot extend this anyway beyond, okay. So for every x in the outside A, there exists some A in A such that, so x is related to A means either x is less than or equal to A, since I am using, or A is, okay, the relation from either side, comparable, I should have used that word, okay. So x is comparable with A, either x is less than or equal to A or A is less than or equal to A. This is a maximal anti-chain. So the lemma which we will be using to prove the infinite version of the Dilbert's theorem is every post set, and I think it is interesting on its own, not just for the not just to prove the Dilbert's lemma. It is interesting on its own to see that every post set has a maximal anti-chain, okay. So every post set, of course I am has a maximal anti-chain. Let me say post set X with so as most arguments using Zorn lemma goes, okay, most of the arguments of Zorn lemma always goes in this manner. We are going to construct a post set, okay, we have a post set, but we are going to construct another one. And the usual relation you always put on this post sets whenever you use Zorn's lemma, you can, if you have seen proofs of Zorn lemma, is containment, okay. The containment is the usual order you use on these post sets. This is a generally the way in which we go about with it. So let's see how to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the set of all anti-chains in X with less than or equal to, okay. So it's quite a simple proof. The only thing is you have to properly use the Zorn's lemma, okay. So let's try to understand it. So suppose, let us take Z to be the set of all anti-chains in X with less than or equal. So is this going to be a subset of X? What are anti-chains of X? They are subsets of X, right? So this contains some subsets of X. So this is going to be a subset of the power set of X, right? Make sense? This is the set of all anti-chains, right? Anti-chains are subsets, right? Anti-chains are subsets of X. So this is going to be a subset of the power set of X. So I can use the same order relation which I use on the power set of X, that is containment. Okay. So consider the pose set. There is one small thing which we need to always check, that is check that the pose set which you are working with is non-empty. Can you tell me why the pose set which we are working with is non-empty? There are some sure shot elements which are going to be in this pose set. What is it? That is in Z. Why is this Z non-empty? Yeah, anyone can tell me? That means in other words you have to tell me one anti-chain. Can you tell me? Can you give me one anti-chain? I told you all at the start of the class. Yeah? Yeah, singleton sets. Singleton sets are always anti-chains, right? So, so consider the pose set Z with containment. Okay, so what do I need to show basically? The trick is to get hold of this maximal anti-chain. I am going to say that this pose set always has a upper bound. I mean, sorry, every chain in this pose set always has a upper bound. It's quite simple. So suppose, let us call it as C alpha, such that index set is a chain in Z. Don't get confused between these two pose sets. This is not a subset of this pose set. It is not. Okay. We are looking at all the anti-chains, looking at it with containment. Okay. That's what we are looking at. The natural intuition would be to catch hold of the maximal anti-chain is try to look for some sort of a biggest element in this. That's the natural intuition. You're looking for a maximal anti-chain, right? So biggest is how you will get from getting a maximal element of this pose set. That's the idea. Okay. So suppose this is some chain in Z with containment. That means given any alpha 1 and alpha 2 here, see C alpha is a subset of X, is contained in Z. C alphas are all contained in Z. Okay. So if this is a chain, what does it mean to say that this is a chain? Given any alpha 1 and alpha 2 in I, C alpha 1 and C alpha 2 are comparable. Either C alpha 1 is less than or equal to C alpha 2, either C alpha 1 is contained in C alpha 2 or C alpha 2 is contained in C alpha 1. Okay. These are all anti-chains. These are all anti-chains of X with less than or equal to. Okay. So let's see. So this is a chain. So what do I need to do? See, as Zon's lemma tells us, a pose set such that every chain is bounded above. Then this has a maximal element. So I need to show that every chain is bounded above. What would be the upper bound of this chain? Okay, again, this is generally how all arguments of the Zon's lemma goes. The upper bound for the element is generally the union of all of these. Okay, because so let us look at the union. So let C be equal to union alpha in I, C alpha. Okay, so one thing we definitely know is that with this order, C alpha is always less than or equal to C, right? C alpha is always contained in C, right? C is union of all of these. So this will always take place. So, but to say that it's an upper bound, I actually need to say that C is in Z. What does it mean to say that C is in Z? What is Z? Set of all anti-chains in X with less than. So I need to say that C is an anti-chain. Okay, I'm taking unions of anti-chains. I want to say that C is an anti-chain. So let's see why C is an anti-chain. So again, this is the general technique of working with Zorn's, means when we do proofs of Zorn's lemma. So how do I show that it is an anti-chain? So take any two elements and show that they are what? Not related. Okay, is that okay? Okay, so it's easy. You take any X and Y in C. What does it mean? When is an element in the union? If it is in one of these, right? So that means there exists some alpha 1 and alpha 2 in I such that, right? So X is in one of them and Y is in another one. Okay, so X is in C alpha 1 and Y is in C alpha 2. To say that X and Y are not related, right, it would be sufficient to just take X and Y and push them inside one of these sets. Why? If I can show that X and Y are both in C alpha 1, that means X and Y would be not related. Why? Because C alpha is a anti-chain, right? Can I push both of them inside one of these sets? So that's again, you got to look what is this. What is this? A chain, right? So either C alpha 1 will be contained in C alpha 2 or C alpha 2 will be contained in C alpha 1. Okay, so as C alpha with alpha in I is a chain in Z with containment, either C alpha 1 would be contained in C alpha 2 or C alpha 2 would be contained in C alpha 1. And without loss of generality, we can always assume that C alpha 1 is contained in C alpha 2. Okay, which would mean that, let us assume this, C alpha 1 is contained in C alpha 2. That will tell us that both X and Y are in the bigger one, C alpha 2, right? X is here, Y is there. So, I mean, this is in C alpha 2, this is contained in C alpha 2, so both are in C alpha 2, which means that X and Y are not comparable. That proves it. So therefore, what we have shown, that C is an anti-chain, and we also know that for any alpha in I, C alpha is a subset of C. So therefore, let us call this as Y. So therefore, Y, the chain Y is bounded above by C, that is simply taking the unions of all the anti-chains. Okay, so this is bounded above. So Zorn's lemma tells us that this set has a maximal element. Okay, so by Zorn's lemma, this is where we use Zorn's lemma. Therefore, by Zorn's lemma, Z with containment has a maximal element let us call that maximal element D. Okay, so D, this is a maximal element here, right? So it's an element of Z, and with containment there is nothing that contains it. Okay, so it already gives you a sense of this is the biggest anti-chain, right? So I need to say that this is a maximal anti-chain. Okay, so how do I show that this is a maximal anti-chain? One, I need to say that D is an anti-chain of Z. Is D an anti-chain of Z? Sorry, anti-chain of X? Yes. Why? Because it's an element of Z. Right? What is Z? Contains all the elements, all the anti-chains of X. Okay. So as D is contained in Z, D is an anti-chain of X with less than or equal to. The second thing I need to show is that if you give me any element outside of D, it should be related to some element in D. Okay, let's see why. So suppose, or let us take an element, let X belong to X difference D. I need to say that it's related to some element in D. What if it's not? Then what happens? Suppose X is not, suppose for every Y in D, let's say S in D, S and X are not comparable. Then what happens? Yeah. So what would happen in this case? What would happen? Suppose for every S in D, S and X are not comparable. What would happen? We know that all elements of D are not comparable, right? Elements of D are not comparable with each other because that's an anti-chain. Also, S is not comparable with any of these elements. So no element of S of D union X is comparable. In D union X, nothing is comparable. No two elements in D union X is comparable. So therefore, what does this tell us? Is an anti-chain. Can you see that? This will be an anti-chain because no two elements of this are comparable, and this is not comparable with any of the elements in D. So therefore, this is an anti-chain. Can that be possible? Why? Exactly, because D, right, this is an anti-chain. So therefore, what happens is D union X is an element in Z, right? But D is strictly less than D union X, right? Because X is not here. So therefore, this is not possible. Why is this not possible? Because D is a maximal element of Z. Okay, now this is a contradiction, as D is a maximal element of Z with containment. Okay, so this gives us a proof. So hence, what happens is so therefore this statement is wrong. Okay, what is the statement? For every S in D, S and X are not comparable, and therefore if this statement is wrong, its negation is true. What is its negation? There is some element of D which is comparable with X. So that's our so if there is some element of D, so given any X, there is some element in D which is comparable with X. So therefore, D is a what? Maximal anti-chain. So therefore, there exists some S in D such that S and X are comparable, and therefore D is a maximal anti-chain. So Yeah, we'll stop here. We'll have a look at the proof of the Dilworth's lemma next time.